there is a concept right at the center of your Meta Ads account that I'm almost certain you have never thought about seriously and that you probably don't really understand, even if you've been running ads for a while. And I know that because I've rarely heard people talk about it until some recent conversation on X. I want to explain to you today why you can't scale your ads the way you think you can, and even why you can't pull your ad spend back and get the efficiency that you want the way you think you should be able to. If you want to understand how your ads actually play out in the Meta Ads auction, and if you want to think about what you can do to set up your business for Meta Ads success at the fundamental levels, lock in for this episode. We're going to get into the weeds and into the details. I think this is going to help you. All right, let me say it up front. If you have any questions as I go on this episode, make sure to leave a comment in the comments here. I'm going to try and do my best to interact with as many of them as I can, because I think there will be questions on this episode. So do that. And while you're at it, why don't you subscribe if you like this episode as it goes, wherever you watch or listen to it. You will like a lot of my content if you like this one. So go do that right now. Okay. Jordan Menard, very smart, very good advertiser, who's going to be on the show very soon. It's another reason to subscribe. Jordan has been recently tweeting about something that he has called natural CAC. It's a nice little phrase to explain the idea that it seems to be the case that Meta Ads settles in at different points to where it just sort of does seem to want to deliver you a certain CAC no matter what you do. And almost everybody who's ever run ads experiences this. Here's Jordan's tweet. I'm going to read it now. And the way he frames it, he says, natural CAC is the cost Meta wants to charge you to acquire a customer. You hit this number and Meta will give you nearly infinite scale. That phrase I think is overstated, but I'm going to come back to why I basically agree with this point in a second. The way he says it is raise your budget 100%, CAC only rises 10%. For subscription brands, the game is finding this number, then scaling into it. Trying to push it lower is a fool's errand. Meta's algo knows the price. And I think this is a very insightful tweet. Again, I'm going to express a little bit of disagreement with it later, but I agree with like 80 to 90% of the point of it. And I think it's important that people understand what Jordan is getting at here because it's very, very helpful, particularly this notion that you raise your budget 100% and your CAC only rises 10%, or the opposite can be true, right? You try to reduce your CAC by 10%, but then maybe you reduce your volume by 50% or something. And that way of talking is something that everybody understands about Meta, which is that there is an inverse relationship between scale and efficiency, right? The more you spend, assuming you're running the same ads, the more you spend, the less efficient your ad spend will be, which is to say your ROAS will go down. But what people don't talk about enough is that inverse relationship is also non-linear, which is to say it doesn't work where if you spend 10% more, you get 10% lower ROAS. If you spend 20% more, you get 20%. The relationship between those is often disproportionate and not nonlinear, right? So like I said, like Jordan said, right, you might spend 100% more and only have a 10% reduction in CAC. You might spend 50% less, or you might try to reduce your CAC by 10% and your volume drops by 50%, right? So you have to decide at that point, do I want more volume or can I find a way to make my business work with 10% worse CAC? Okay. And so that's this question that happens. And again, every advertiser who's run ads at sort of any scale at all, and even at a relatively low scale, has probably experienced something like this. And Jordan's point is that what you ought to do to make that work is that you ought to figure out a way to make your business work at whatever that natural CAC is. Okay. And again, that's a nifty phrase, natural CAC. So you got to try to make your business work at that natural CAC. And if you can do that, you can get a huge, huge amount of volume. Okay. In fact, many people will point out that Meta is primarily a volume machine. And that's the true power of it. That is, what you really, really want is scale with Meta. And if you can make that work, that's the way to make the machine work for you because it has so much reach at relatively good efficiency. And I don't think Jordan is suggesting that you should be unprofitable in your business or anything like that. He references it in reference to a subscription business, which is the kind of business that he runs. But I think in that case, he's saying, I get so much LTV off of my subscription customers that I'm gonna try really hard to spend at as low of a CAC as I possibly can, because I can get so much volume that if I can make that work at the level of LTV and margin, then I can make the business work. And so, like I said, I think Jordan is basically right about this, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. Okay. This notion of a nonlinear relationship between volume and efficiency is important. Taylor Holiday and Common Thread Collective have the idea of a marginal frontier, which is a sort of related concept that there's some frontier at which your spend no longer creates marginal value, and often there is a massive drop off between the two sides of the marginal frontier, and so you got to figure that out as well. And they actually seek to quantify that dynamic in their forecasting, which is a really cool idea. But the volume can really pump. And I want to tell you now why I think the natural CAC is a real thing, and understand what's happening more in this dynamic. Okay, so the first and most important consideration for why natural CAC happens is because your brand also has what I'm going to call a natural customer. Okay. And everybody who has ever run a brand agrees with this notion of a natural customer the moment they make something called a customer avatar or customer persona. Okay. What they mean is there's a certain kind of customer who makes the most sense for me to acquire. And I'm going to speak primarily to that customer. And the thing about a natural customer is that they have a natural CPM. Okay. Because that customer is worth a certain amount of money to a certain amount of companies, and therefore, in a giant auction with which Meta is, the dynamics work out as such. The giant marketplace works out as such that a CPM, the cost to reach that customer, just sort of settles at a certain price as all the brands can figure out what they can afford. And so actually the idea of a natural CAC or a natural CPM is misleading. In Jordan's phrasing, it sounds a bit like what Jordan is saying is that Meta has some number at which they sort of want to deliver to you a customer. And I actually don't think that's quite right. And I'm not actually saying Jordan is saying that. I think he's simplifying on purpose, right? I think Jordan probably understands this, but it's not really like some arbitrary number that Meta assigns the value to. It is a reflection of a marketplace dynamic. And it is particularly a marketplace built on auctions, which if you talk to an economist, an auction is actually almost always the most efficient way to make a market work, because it is so good at setting the sort of true price of a given item for purchase. In this case, a customer's attention. Okay, ad space on a customer's feed is really what it is. Auctions are very good at efficiently distributing a scarce good, and so because of that, and again, somebody's feed space is a scarce good. There's only so much of it to go around. Okay, so auctions are really good at this, because what it allows a bunch of people to do is take a bunch of rational actors who all have rational reasons to pay what they're going to pay for that item. Again, in this case, the customer's feed placement. And it's really good at saying like, okay, we're going to keep raising the price until somebody stops being willing to pay for it. And once everybody but one person stops being willing to pay for that a little bit of digital real estate, okay, once that happens, that's the price. Actually, the second highest price, because it's a second price sealed auction on Meta, but that's a conversation for another day. The highest price is the space goes to the person who pays the highest price, and because of that, the highest price gets set at massive scale, extremely fast, by a bunch of rational actors who are all willing to pay the same amount of all of this. And here's the thing about these marketplaces. As many people have noticed and noted before, if you look at almost any large data set of meta ads, what you will see is that the blended average ROAS across all the advertisers, you throw 500 advertisers into a data set and look at all of their blended ROAS measured basically according to like the true contribution of their ads. Okay. The blended ROAS always settles somewhere right around a 2-to-1. You look and just say like, okay, well, how efficient can your ads be, on Meta? And somebody will answer that question by saying, well, on average across 500 brands, it's a 2-to-1 ROAS, right? And I've seen that number for forever. I'd seen it in CTC's old numbers that they used to publish. It's a 2-to-1 ROAS, and that's what kind of everybody gets. And again, it's easy to misunderstand what's happening here. The reason the average ROAS for a bajillion brands is 2-to-1 or something like it is not because Meta is unable to deliver a 3-to-1 ROAS, but because it is rational for brands to deploy as many dollars as they can as long as they deliver profitable contribution margin. Okay. And as long as the contribution margin is profitable, then brands will keep spending. They will keep reaching additional customers and therefore bringing down their ROAS to some degree as they increase their scale. And most successful brands have somewhere between 50 and 70 points of landed margin, which means something like a 2-to-1 ROAS, give or take, okay, delivers a high volume of profitable contribution margin customers. Put more simply, if I have 60 points of margin, okay, and a 2.5 ROAS, why not spend more money if I'm trying to grow my business? This is why, by the way, you can, anytime somebody posts a screenshot of like a 6-to-1 ROAS on Facebook and talks about how well they're doing, you just can tell, right away, especially if they don't put the spend numbers in, okay? You can just throw that out and assume the person is lying about what's really happening. Because if the ROAS was really got that good, they would spend more money, because it's irrational for them to take a 6-to-1 ROAS and be like, nah, I don't want any more. I'm getting $6 back for every dollar I put in this machine, minus COGS, which are, even the worst COGS are still going to deliver a profit at 6-to-1, okay? And so I'm getting $6 back, but I'm going to stop spending. I don't want to do 5-to-1. I only want 6-to-1. Like, it's just not the way things work. And it's a silly idea. And so again, people will keep spending until they reach that ROAS. And the reason that's significant is because that behavior extrapolated out across a bunch of brands, like all the brands in the Facebook, there's 3 million advertisers on Facebook, 3 million advertisers on Facebook. Okay. Across all of these advertisers, across shared categories, okay, somewhere there's overlap for all these categories. What it does is it has the collective effect of setting a market price for ad delivery. And that ends up being this idea of the natural CPM. The market prices are quantified in CPMs. Those CPMs, what a Facebook CPM is, what a meta ad CPM is a giant reflection of the equilibrium of all of these brands' dollars flooding into a rational auction-based marketplace. And so therefore, Meta has a price for a customer. And of course, the more that Meta can efficiently distribute everybody's dollars in that system, the more those CPMs can go up and the more that everybody can still win. Because now each dollar you spend is more efficient, and now you can pay more for the spend because you can sort of optimize for conversion more. This, by the way, is also why the notion that like, oh man, Meta CPMs have gone up so much over time, it's so bad, is so silly. The reason Meta ads CPMs have gone up so much over time is both because of, number one, inflation. Okay. So that's part of it. Yes, they have gone up, but so has everything. Gone up over time in price. Number two, because Meta has gotten better at efficiently distributing dollars. They have done a number of things along the way also to increase the total available inventory. But like Meta got all the users, especially in the US. They got all the users already. Okay. Everybody is using Meta products in some way or another, or just about everybody. Okay. And for a while, it was probably Facebook first, and then Instagram stories opened up a whole bunch of new inventory. And then after Instagram stories, Instagram Reels opened up a whole bunch of new inventory. And now over 50% of time on Instagram is spent on Reels. It's just they've been pretty good about this. Maybe they'll make Threads work, and to where Threads actually creates a whole bunch more inventory for people. I don't know, but they've sort of in some ways, it seems to me, maxed out the total number of active users on the platform. What they have continued to do as they have done that, as they have sort of reached some kind of a diminishing or some kind of a plateau on how many users they've got on the platform. At the same time, they have made the efficiency of the distribution of dollars in that platform more and more efficient. So the CPM goes up because of that, and that's fine, because ultimately, as long as it's generating conversions, you're in a good place. If you are thinking through the issues in this episode and your brain is working carefully on how to make every click more valuable to your business, then INTELLIGEMS is a critical tool in your D2C business tool belt. INTELLIGEMS is not a conversion rate optimization CRO tool. It's a profit optimization tool, and all of my clients, literally all of them, use it. And I have one who just did something really cool, which is they went out of their way to make double, triple sure that all of the data that they give to INTELLIGEMS about their COGS and their shipping costs and all those things are up to date, so that when they just launched a new test about the design of a build of like a custom bundle builder on their site, when they went to go do that, they now know that that at all the different possible outcomes that they might have in that test, that the actual key metric that they will end up looking at will be the profit per click, because that's what INTELLIGEMS gives you. INTELLIGEMS helps you evaluate every test that you run, every landing page, website optimization test you run, offer optimization test you run with INTELLIGEMS. They help you evaluate that based off of the actual profit per click on your site. And that allows you to do all kinds of creative and smart things. Plus, INTELLIGEMS lets you test bigger things than just simple design changes on your website. So for example, you can change site-wide offers. You can change free shipping thresholds. You can change shipping prices and test them. You can even change the price of your product and run split tests on the actual price of your product, which has a massive impact on how customers relate to your business. And you'll find all kinds of trade-offs between volume and efficiency there. INTELLIGEMS is a tool that, simply put, is sort of critical for smart, savvy, profit-minded entrepreneurs who are and D2C operators who are trying to make their businesses work harder and better for them as their teams go to work, trying to drive CAC as low as possible on as many customers as possible. INTELLIGEMS is a critical tool in making every click more valuable to you. Again, all of my clients literally use it. I just don't know how you operate a D2C business right now without making that part of what you're doing. Go to intelligems.io to get 20% off your first 3 months with the code FARIS20, FARIS20. Go to the FARIS20, intelligems.io. The link for that is in the show notes if you lose it. Go check it out today. Get started. Make every click more valuable to your business and measure it the right way at the level of profit, not just conversion rate or AOV. Intelligems.io. The CPM reflects that giant equilibrium of the marketplace. And in this respect, Meta ads is much more like Google search ads than people usually realize. The challenge with search ads, is that this sort of rational marketplace dynamic that I'm describing is actually even more fixed because there are a fixed number of searches for a given term, and all the advertisers who would like to win the search clicks on that term will pay up to exactly whatever that click is worth to them. And that makes some CPMs, like in CPCs, insanely high. I once was on vacation chatting with a guy who was an injury attorney, personal injury attorney, like some of the biggest advertisers around. In any city, you see billboards for these folks all the time. And they were talking about their Google ad spend because we got talking about work stuff, and I mentioned that I had run Meta ads and some Google ads along the way. And he was like, oh yeah, we pay like $150 CPC. $150 CPC, cost per click. Why are they doing that? Is that because Google is rigging the auction against injury attorneys? Now, of course, we should allow for that possibility. Google has actively been sued for auction rigging in the past. So there is a possibility that they're setting a very high reserve price for their auction space. And so we should also generally have some suspicion of big tech companies, I think. But I actually don't think that's what's happening here at all in this case. I think what's happening, or at least not mostly in this case, I think what's happening is that a click for personal injury attorney, somebody searching for that, is so freaking valuable to a personal injury attorney that they are willing to pay $150 for it because it still creates outsized profit for their business. And therefore, they will keep going up in price in a fixed system with an auction where they can set a price for how much they're willing to pay. The click is worth $150, so they pay $150. And that's why you and I don't pay $150 for a search click on an e-commerce business, because it is not worth $150. So it's not an auction rigging thing. And I think this is very similar to what's happening on Meta ads. And it's most obvious with in-market audiences, So search for any given product, and everybody's experienced this at some point. You search for any given product, and what happens, of course, is that you start getting in your feed ads for a whole bunch of related products in the same category, Go search for, a multivitamin, You're going to get all the multivitamin ads from all the multivitamin companies all next to each other. And that is like really, really common, The multivitamin customer, here's the thing about this, right? The multivitamin customer is worth whatever the multivitamin customer is worth. And just like the personal injury click is worth whatever the personal injury click for the injury attorney is worth, And so, just like those injury attorneys, the multivitamin brands will pay whatever it is worth for them to get the click. And the CPMs, therefore, for, let's say, wealthy middle-aged women in market for health and wellness products are so high because they're worth it. they're worth it to the brands. And so the CPM goes up a whole bunch. And this is where Jordan's natural CAC idea becomes really, really clear. Natural CAC is a reflection of that marketplace dynamic, particularly for in-category clicks like that, which is a huge amount of what makes Meta effective, is those in-category markets, those in-category clicks, okay? Sort of once you're in that category, and then you can be shopped against all these other ones and compared to all the other ones, I think it's a really big part of people's media mix, whether they realize it or not. Of course, you can't always tell where your ad's being delivered and what it's being delivered next to, but that's the idea. And in that scenario especially, the brands that can find a way to afford paying the most for those ad placements are going to simply outmuscle the brands that can't. Like if a click is worth $10 to both of us, but I've made my business work so that I can pay $8 for it, but you can only pay $7, I'm going to beat you in the auction. Okay. And again, the word auction is critical. I'm just going to outbid you for the click. And that will create volume for me and lack of volume for you, even though you'll be at your efficiency target. And if you play that out over all the brands that are in that space, it's really easy to imagine how these tipping points in volume and efficiency would be nonlinear. If most brands in the same in the category have roughly the same COGS, okay, and again, they probably mostly do, and will charge a similar amount, there's some price elasticity. And if the rest of their business cost structures, like their OpEx and all that stuff, all tends towards similar places, then if I have a better business cost structure, if I have better LTV, if I have something like that, I can outmuscle all of them at once. Okay. And I can do that by simply paying more for the click. And therefore, that will make it so that an auction after auction after auction, I'm going to keep beating all these other bidders. And do you see how that would work itself out to where I would end up getting a whole bunch more volume than everybody else? Because if all of the other brands are tending towards some category average, then I'm going to beat a whole bunch of them in one place. And again, those businesses probably have fairly similar structures and cost dynamics on the whole. There is some average at which they exist. And what I think people miss here, or what might be easy to miss, is the way the same dynamic is in play even for non-in-market customers, okay? So like whether or not a customer is actively solution aware or even problem aware, like searching for multivitamins or something like that, actively in market for multivitamins, she may well be in the demographic that fits your core target, okay? So she still may be a wealthy, middle-aged woman who has some health and wellness consideration, again, even if she's not actively problem or solution aware. And that means she probably has similar characteristics to other customers who are in market, and therefore she probably costs a similar amount to reach, which is to say that probably a little bit less directly, but still to some degree, okay, she ends up costing some amount of, quote, natural CAC. Her CPM will tend towards some number, again, even if she's not super obviously in market for the product. Okay, play it out over tens of millions of customers, thousands of brands, countless individual auctions for space in feeds, and natural cost thresholds emerge for these groups. And so, as I said, this is where Meta's auctions at large function more like Google's auctions, I think, than people realize. And then the game becomes exactly what Jordan says it is in that original tweet that I like so much, that original post, right? I recently spoke at a conference about the creative methodology at AJF Growth. We're talking about the notion of the message being the core driver of success of an ad, and how we think about this explore and expand process, and how we really, really focus on the right message for the right customer. And that's what we build entire creative process around. Well, when I was done speaking, there was a Q&A session, and somebody asked me the question, okay, well, that's great, but what about the landing page? If you are paying all this attention to making sure that your message is right, okay, then what happens after somebody clicks on your ad? Like, are you carrying that same message through? And that is exactly the right question to ask about how your creative works. And it is the place where FERMAT becomes a really, really useful tool for good, smart advertising teams who are trying to build great messaging at scale, great creative at scale. FERMAT, basically, what it allows you to do is create almost a custom website, an entire custom website at the level of different customers and different angles for your ads. So in the example I gave in this episode, I talked about different customers for multivitamin versus like a customer who might want sort of a general multivitamin, better quality multivitamin, and a customer who might want a recovery focused, physical, like fitness recovery focused supplement. Well, those two might be a middle-aged woman and a 25-year-old man or something like that. And it would be strange to send both of those customers to the same website. So what FERMAT allows you to do is to create highly custom, sort of bespoke funnels for each of those different customers and really build all of your messaging from at the level of copy, at the level of design, at the level of custom PDPs, of course, like pre-sale landers, all of that kind of stuff separately at the level of angles. And if you start doing this at a real scale, you can start spinning out a ton of landers really fast because FERMAT is so good at making this fast and easy for brands. You can also build custom upsells, custom bundles, all kinds of things that make it easier for you to work with Shopify on that kind of stuff. Again, all built at scale. The way that I've heard them say it is they want to empower marketer types, like performance marketers, to build those kinds of custom funnels without ever having to touch the main website and piss off the brand people. So check it out today. If that's the kind of thing that you are doing, go check it out today. It's a really cool, tool, really cool product. FERMATcommerce.com/AF, FERMATcommerce.com/AF. Go check it out today. You ask yourself the question, how do I win at those cost thresholds, given the nonlinear relationship between scale and efficiency? How can I get that scale up a bunch and win here, okay? And I'm going to now give you 5 ways to actually do that, okay? Actually, excuse me, 6. 6 ways to actually do that. And so let's talk about what those are going to be. The first way to win at given the natural CAC problem is to recognize where your natural CAC is, or where it is at least right now. Where is the volume to efficiency trade-off in your business if you improve nothing, okay? How does this actually work for you business-wise, okay? What's better for you? A big giant drop-off in volume as you get more efficient, or finding a way to make the efficiency work with more volume? And different businesses and different stages will answer this question really differently, okay? But Jordan is right, in my view, that the biggest, most tantalizing opportunity that Meta represents for brands is the volume opportunity. So if you can find a way to make that work, generally speaking, you should try to make more volume work for your business, generally speaking. Now, so a whole bunch of other considerations here, including your goals, your financing, your skill level, your self-assessment of your skill level. I think if you are less financially savvy, then you ought to not play this game on hard mode, right? You should take a little more efficiency, even if it means slower growth, because your death risk goes down quite a bit. Like I think back to my time running brands at 4x400. That was an incredibly complex system where you had a mixed up cap table with 6 different brands in a portfolio with different ownership structures for each brand, and trying to figure out how to share money across brands and how to build a central organization within the brands. It was like really complex financially to figure out all these things. And the thing is, I wasn't very good financially. Like I just wasn't that savvy. Even now, I'm decently financially savvy, but I'm not amazing at it. And there's people who are much, much, much more financially savvy than I am. And therefore, I ought to be honest about that and play the game in a way that is not going to create a giant problem for me in that way. So starting place, recognize what your natural CAC actually is. Like what is actually happening in your business right now as best as you can tell. Be honest about it, own it, and then start to think about what's best next, okay? And number 2, okay, there is an important point about creative here, and it's that better ads help you penetrate deeper into audiences while maintaining your natural CAC, okay? Because, and this is the sort of clear reasons for this, among other things, there is an auction adjustment for user engagement, and it's called estimated action rate. In Meta's auction calculation, one of the things that goes into it is your bid, but another thing that goes into it is the estimated action rate. And then the user value is factored in there as well, right? The actual formula for a bid, okay, used by Meta's ad auction to determine the total value of an ad to the advertiser and to figure out how to distribute your ads is advertiser bid times estimated action rate plus user value, okay? That is what the formula is. And because of that, that means that the estimated action rate is a real consideration here, which is to say that the more effective your ads are at driving a certain estimated action rate, the more you can maintain your bid at the same level while driving up the value of the ad space to you, if that makes sense, okay? If you sort of set a bid that's the same amount, whether you are doing a manual bid or automated bids, and that bid times the estimated action rate is significant there. So this allows certain bidders dollars to go forward because based on how users engage with your ads and how much value you can get from the user, they have strong incentive. Meta has strong incentive, of course, by the way, to make sure users are having engaging experiences on the platform. And so this is one of the arguments for having a good process for creating good quality ads. The more good quality ads you create, the more penetration you're going to have at that natural CAC. It's actually one of the reasons particularly to have what we call our expand process, good process here, where we take winning ads, where you have a certain message that is winning and therefore reaching some natural CAC ceiling. Okay. You have ads reaching a ceiling of natural CAC. And when that happens, you then want to say, okay, this ad is working within this audience. How can I create the same message and make this go further? Okay. Use the same message, but change up, like make sure that the actual new piece of creative is highly variable, diverse from that. So I can take this further by increasing the user value, basically, or the estimated action rate on these ads. And if you can do that, you can penetrate further into a certain category or a certain angle or whatever it is. Okay. But better ads basically is one of the solves here. So this is why sometimes without changing your ROAS targets or your bid caps or your daily spend or whatever it is, suddenly your performance will massively increase as you launch new ads. This is that very basic idea that everybody's chasing all the time anyway, made explicit, okay, and into the process of how the auction works. Better ads push you further there, and it's a really big part of how to do this, okay? Number 3, once we get past the ad, we talk about what happens post-click. And so a simple way to make your natural CAC work for you more and to be able to spend more at that CAC is to have a better post-click optimization, right? People sometimes talk about CRO. I would say like profit optimization is maybe a better way of talking about that, or just value optimization in some way. It could be LTV optimization, but this is lander optimization. This is upsells. This is spending on higher LTV customers, just like making the customer worth more to you over time. Anything you can do to make the click worth more money, okay, ends up making it so that you can enter more auctions more effectively without changing anything about your ads themselves. So that kind of process is really important. And when I see people who are real killers in this kind of space, people like Jordan, so far as I can tell, I've never seen his P&L, but it seems to me that he's done really well. Zach Stock comes to mind. A couple of folks who I just think are really, one of the things I watch happen with these kinds of advertisers is they just effort their ads and landers like crazy. They are just super tactical monsters at finding ways to do this all the time. It's the very sort of Hormozy, Russell Brunson mentality of just hammer away at your funnel endlessly and keep pushing. And if you can do that, you can end up creating a ton of value, even beyond the ad itself, right? Just take actions against that funnel, okay? Number 4, explore new audiences. And this is where you think about this, the idea of beating your natural CAC by getting outside of it a little bit, getting outside of the fixed equilibriums that I mentioned. So like I said, like every customer is worth some amount, and there's some amount that they're worth settled based on the sort of broad dynamics of the auction. But maybe one way to think about this is it might be really, really difficult to get 10% more volume at your natural CAC, wherever that is set at in your business on the same customer. But what actually might happen is that by finding a new audience with a new angle, you might be able to get 30% more volume or 50% more volume by reaching outside of that core group. Okay. And again, this is the notion of creative diversity and messaging diversity in your ads played out at the level of the auction. And by the way, this is probably the place I disagree with Jordan's tweet the most, which is, he mentions near limitless scale or whatever the exact phrasing is. I should get it exactly right. So I quote him. Yeah, nearly infinite scale. That's what he says. I just don't think that's quite true. I'm also not going to push Jordan too hard on the precision of that language because I see what he's saying, right? The notion that like there's a whole bunch of scale if you can do this right. And I bet if you pressed him on it, he would say it's not truly near infinite. That's my guess. I don't know. We could ask him. But but I think there's a bunch of hard work to kind of actually make this happen at the level of better ads that help you penetrate deeper into those same audiences and making each click worth more. Okay, that's a whole bunch of work. But you might be able to, instead of doing the sort of grunt work that I just described above about post-click optimization, all that stuff, you might be able to get a whole bunch more volume by just reaching outside to a different customer. Okay, and so that often happens by thinking really far outside of your current avatars and personas and angles, and instead having a good explore process. Again, the way we talk about AGF growth, right? 2 parts of the creative process: explore and expand. A good explore process to help you reach new audiences. And that leads us to number 5, which may be related to that, which is to launch new products. Okay. Probably the biggest way that you can think about getting outside your current audience and the current value propositions is to go and launch more products. And that will naturally lead you to new audiences. I have one client that has done an incredible job targeting people interested in travel with one product, and then they found a different product at some point that was able to reach people interested in baseball. And when you think about something like that, like it's similar products, there's ways in which the values are the same, but really different audiences and really different values. And that really had a big impact on their ability to produce volume. This is a really critical thing. Again, you can think in supplements, finding new categories of supplements to get into, new kinds of customers, right? Maybe there's a supplement for, like I said, a multivitamin or something like that, something very general. And then somebody who's savvy and wants something that's a better quality multivitamin. But then maybe there's also something for fitness recovery or, whatever. So yeah, there's a million of those different things. New flavors could potentially do this. People who have very strong flavor preferences for things. Launching more products is another way to beat this. And then finally, and I think the thing that is really important here at the core is to design your business for volume. If you actually design your business for volume, then you can really exploit this. And I've watched some people do this really, really well, where they really don't care that much about the total efficiency. All they care about is scale. Okay. They just care about pushing harder and further into more scale. And I think this is underrated and maybe the most important of all these, and can be done a lot of ways to push yourself for scale. One of them for bootstrap brands is to think about all the things that I talk about a lot on this podcast and that Taylor Holiday talks about a lot. And that is to think about being ruthless about your P&L efficiency all the way. Like run your D2C business with a very low OpEx, like hammer away at your supply chain to get better pricing, to get better terms, to get better shipping costs and all that, right? Like all of these things that go into making your business more efficient. Like, remote staffing for me is a really big one of these, where I don't understand why businesses don't do that. If you can make it so that your fixed costs in your business are really lean and your variable costs and your cost of delivery are really low, well, you can just reinvest a bunch of that money that you save in those two parts of your business into CAC. Instead of just pocketing the profit, you can reinvest it into CAC. And because there's a nonlinear relationship between volume and efficiency, you may be able to get a whole bunch more volume when you do that. If you get 5 more points of margin that you can put into ads, and now you can increase your CAC by X dollars, related to a 5% margin increase, you actually might have a whole bunch more volume there. And if you can do that, you can really win very big. Another way to do this, by the way, to outmuscle people in the auction is by raising money. And I it's sort of frowned upon in some ways to raise money by some people, and I think most people recognize there's cases for it and cases against it. If you wanted to me to tell you where I think the supplement boom will end up being a bubble, or where that bubble will burst or something like that, well, the first thing I would tell you is that it's possible that, of course, there'd be like FDA regulation or platform level regulation, something like that could really hurt things. That might be the issue. But I think another possibility here is that some smart investor types will go to, or some smart entrepreneurs will go to investor types and say, hey, all of these people are goofing around being close to break even or even profitable on first purchase, despite that their LTVs are so massive in this category with subscribers. And so what we ought to do is raise a bunch of capital up front, pay more for those customers, and play a very long game, because supplement customers tend to last a very long time. And therefore, we're just going to outmuscle everybody in the auction and crush their volume, right? I think that would be a difficult thing for people to do. And I think for brands that are supplement brands that are already established, they'll be fine. Like they're probably not going to have like a crazy problem there. But it may make it so that there just become less new entrants into the category in that case. So yes, there's that. If I want to sort of make the negative case for how that'll happen, but that would be a way to design your business for volume. It would be to sort of create a capital cushion and then use that really effectively within a deep understanding of these dynamics and how meta ads works, and then to go push your business that way. The very best brands, of course, will do all of these. And this is the day-to-day work of many brands in our space. They will set their CAC targets intelligently with a knowledge of their natural CAC. They will have a replicable process for creative, for both exploring and expanding, expanding on winning ads and exploring new angles and new messages. They will be constantly hammering away at their funnels to make every click more valuable to them. They will be designing lean, supply chain efficient businesses, and they will do that while launching products along the way that are really good. And each of those products will be launched within that framework. And if you can do all of that, businesses can be remarkably successful at remarkable scale. It just means that you must focus on these core areas to make it work. All right, if you're watching this somewhere and you notice my video looks a little worse than usual, sorry about that. I left my camera in a hotel room. So it's just like story of my life right there. Email me if you have any thoughts on this episode, podcast@ajfgrowth.com. Like I said, I'm going to have Jordan on soon. I'm going to definitely ask him about this concept and see, and maybe I can try and get this to him ahead of time, see if he agrees or disagrees with any of my points. And I would also love to hear from you publicly on this. That includes comments on this video would be one obvious place where you can do that. Another place that you could do that, of course, would be on X. Andrew J. Ferris is the place to find me there. And yeah, of course, like I said, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, because you're going to like my other episodes. If you made it all the way through this episode and you're here, you will like it. A couple sponsors I love who have been a part of this episode are INTELLIGEMS and FERMAT. Go check out both of those, follow up with them. They both are directly relevant to the content in this episode, talking about CRO, talking about building tight funnels, all those kinds of things. They're really good. So go check those out. And ajfgrowth.com is the place to go for everything that I'm doing, including if you want to work with our agency at some point. We are not taking clients right now, but if you want to get a conversation going, think about a wait list, something like that, we can talk about it for next year.